So we have a few people here. I think I will go ahead and send out a reminder message to the mailing list, and we'll wait a couple of minutes for people to drag in.
So Brian, shall we get started?
Yeah, I think we go ahead and
we'll
go ahead and start and see if we have a few more showing up as we do.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Okay, let's kick off our discussion. So welcome to our SCONE interim meeting. So this is our third interim meeting since Madrid. So thanks everyone to manage to come to this meeting. Please note that this meeting will be recorded. The focus of today's discussion is hackathon project plan and interoperability. So note where apply, as usual, we have to know we need to follow the IETF process and rules, and we all know the contribution to the IETF, including presentation, audio, video, should be publicly available of this meeting. So working group status, we have already scheduled 2 interim meetings since Madrid to progress both SCONE, both base protocol and also applicability. And in the second in the meeting, we have good discussion on applicability and manageability. So we start a adoption call, and actually we receive a lot of good support. Also, we receive some pushback and suggestion from Martin, Lucas, and all Tianji, and all resonate and suggest to focus on generic guideline and principle instead of only limit to the 3GPP usage. So we ask author to revise the draft, post a new version, and also we extend the adoption call for another 2 weeks. Now we are close to the deadline for this adoption call. So we encourage all the people to review the latest update and provide feedback. In addition, in this meeting, we also reserve some time to review the latest update of the applicability. Hopefully, we can resolve the concern in this meeting. So document status, as we clarified in the previous interim meeting, we set a priority for the SCONE-based protocol. And in addition to meet the milestone timeframe, we also will make progress on the applicability and make it ready for the adoption call. Meeting administrative, and I believe all of us actually use the data tracker to log into this Media Echo. So your attendance will be automatically recorded. And we're also looking for the volunteer to take notes. We have already sent the note URL to the chat window. Please also help to watch the discussion in the chat window, forward the key discussion points to the meeting room if necessary. So here's the agenda for today's discussion. And we have 1.5 time slot. We'll spend first 40 minutes to discuss IETF Hackathon project plan and interoperability for IETF 124. And Wes will take will lead the discussion. After that, we'll spend 20 minutes to review the latest update of applicability and manageability draft, and to discuss how the open issue can be resolved. And this will be led by the Sanjay. And if time allowed, we can go back to review the open issue for the base protocol. Any agenda batch? If none, let's move to the first topic. Wes.
All right. Okay, so we've started planning for a hackathon on SCONE at the next IETF meeting. It's in just a few weeks, and so wanted to use some time in the interim today to discuss planning for that and what we all want to do and accomplish. So just a brief description of what this is. For those not familiar, what we will do for SCONE is part of the overall IETF hackathon. There's a IETF webpage where you can register for the hackathon. It's free, and you can participate both in person and remote from wherever you are if you don't attend the IETF meeting in person. It's much easier to participate effectively if you're in person. We'll have a table or an area of the meeting room allocated, and we'll be able to coordinate and work together in person pretty easily. But we can also loop in people remotely and I think make test machines and software instances available remotely as well pretty easily. We've created a project on the IETF wiki for the overall hackathon to say we want to work on SCONE together. And there are a few of us listed as champions. I should note the rest of these charts I just created and did not necessarily get buy-in from the rest of the champions on. So this is maybe a working meeting in a way to get that buy-in from other people and see if we agree on what we want to do at the hackathon. In general, though, I think it's a good chance to work on anything related to SCONE and advance the state of SCONE implementations, whether those be in quick clients, quick servers, network elements, or in applications above, or in other tools like Wireshark or something else. So if you want to participate, the first thing you need to do is register for the IETF hackathon. It doesn't cost anything. You don't have to register for the meeting. You don't have to pay the meeting registration fee. The hackathon is a separate activity. Additionally, we have a SCONE interop channel on Slack. There's a quick dev Slack instance that you can get on, and if you aren't already on it and need an invitation, you can contact myself or any of the listed champions. We'll get you an invitation. That's going to be the best way to collaborate, especially if you're remote, both during and prior to the hackathon. So if you have something you want to come to the hackathon and do, please join that channel and let us know about it so that we can coordinate efforts to support you. I was thinking, based on our last hackathon at the Madrid IETF meeting, that something we should do better up front in terms of planning is lay out some of the configurations that we want to jointly test. Some people will bring client implementations, some will bring server implementations, some will bring both. Some people will bring network element implementations, and permutations of different clients, servers, and network elements should be individually tested. And in each case, there are varying degrees of success. So negotiating the transport parameter is one thing. Actually receiving the client indications at the network element is another thing. And we didn't have this last time. I think that's a newer aspect of the spec that's been defined since the last IETF meeting. Getting the rate indications successfully all the way across the network is another thing that we can look at, and whether updates to the rate come in might be a final thing. And if there are other aspects we should look at, let's talk about it and add them. But in the last hackathon, we were really just working on the initial implementations for the most part. Some people came with code ready, but others were just working on their code during the meeting. In this case, since we have that prior experience to build on, I don't think we'll need the whole hackathon timeframe in order to develop code. And I was thinking that we'll be more focused on tests, but we'll see what happens. In terms of facilitating coordination, especially if some people are remote, I was thinking we might create a shared doc with some indications of what people are actually bringing, so that if you're bringing a client, you could know what servers and network elements are available to test with and such. And so we will have, for anyone that's there, we'll have public IP addresses on the IETF network that could be used for testing. If you're not there in person and want to participate in testing, we'll need to know how to get to your things. If it's a network element or a server that you're wanting to support testing through. So that may require some data that we coordinate on. And in terms of agenda, so the hackathon is a 2-day thing, and we can only go at the pace that people are able to support. So if people don't come with code ready to test, it may take some time to get everyone up to speed and ready to do some testing. However, for people that come prepared and ready to test, maybe we can start faster with some permutations of client, server, and network elements. So I think this could be a variable thing, but in general, Saturday morning, we meet up, get together at a table designated for SCONE, and we'll start to coordinate on the data on what IPs and ports people are set up on with their implementations, and then start testing by afternoon. If we can get some test results, we'll be able to support the briefing on Sunday afternoon of hackathon results, but it comes up fast. And so we really have to, I think, be planning to start testing by Saturday afternoon in order to get results, since Sunday morning winds up being sort of compressed because we start the day, then we have lunch, and suddenly we're out briefing results. And if we haven't had time to even prepare results, then for the briefing, then it becomes a pretty crunched time. I see Lucas' comment. I think, yeah, I think anyone who wants to do hacking throughout the week after the hackathon, that's definitely a valid thing to do. We don't prevent it. And we can use the same Slack channel to coordinate those kind of things. Last IETF meeting in Madrid, that happened to some extent, but the level of activity, I think, was much greater and less focused after the hackathon than it is during the hackathon on the weekend, when we're sort of dedicated to this work and not attending 17 other working groups, such. So one of the great things about being on site is you get an IP in the IETF address block, and so it's very easy to run tests against each other's machines. For remote people, please think about in advance how you can participate in terms of IP reachability, and if there are any firewalls or other middle boxes that will prevent effective testing. That was actually something that happened last time. We had some corporate firewalls that prevented some people from being able to fully participate. Just want to say everyone's code is welcome to participate. It doesn't have to be open source at all. And people should feel free to come and go during the hackathon. You don't have to stay for the entire time. You could come for just one day, for instance. There may be tools or other things you want to work on other than just SCONE implementations themselves. And Brian brought us some pastries last time that were not quite scones, but close. If actual scones show up, I think the group would love that. That's all I've got. I think this is a good time to bash the plans and see what people actually want to do.
So yeah, I'll get it kicked off. I will say I expect that scones will be easier to source in Montreal than they were in Madrid. I will say, as chair, I would very much like, we're going to reserve some time for that hackathon presentation also within the working group meeting, right? Like, so for those who are attending but can't come to the hackathon, we will have sort of the readout of the interop. That was a thing that we did a lot during Quick, during the sort of the rapid development of Quick. Found it super useful. We will be instituting that tradition in the working group. With my chair hat off, this looks great. I would suggest that we also take the opportunity during the in-person time at and after the hackathon to set up protocols, and here I'm talking very, very informally about protocols for continuous interop testing over time, right? Like, so yes, it gets much more diffuse, but if it's like hey, we have this thing running on this cloud instance over here, and you can access it like every third Friday when the moon is full or whatever, right? Like, so we can take not only that interop matrix and sort of have that continuous, like, have that interrupt matrix be continuously updated. We could also take the test planning and have that be continuously updated. I'll plug Jin's suggestion in the chat to, we should actually have a subsection on the wiki where all of this stuff lives and stays sort of up to date and current.
Yeah, and if people have stable test servers or test elements that there's some way to shoot traffic through, then maybe we could record that information in the working group GitHub as well.
Hi. Yeah, I think this is thanks for preparing all these slides and this this list of potential tests and so on. I think this would be great to test. One thing that was a bit of a problem last time was how we route traffic through network elements. So how we solved it last time was basically I'm running a network element on a host, and on the same host I'm also running one of my servers. That works, but it's not great. I think it would be nice if we could spend some time on thinking on the network topology we have here and to see if we can, in some easy way, perhaps at least for the people who are on site, that we can, just route packets through the network element between separate client and server implementations. I think that will be something we should spend a little bit of time on, how we should set that up to work. I don't know if we can. I mean, in principle, I could bring I could bring Ethernet cables and a switch or something or whatever, but I would like us to look at that. On the tests and so on, I think these are good basic tests for the protocol. I would like to check if anybody on the application side has an implementation to actually regulate their sending rates based on advice, because I think one thing that would be nice to test as well is kind of the sliding window algorithm that is discussed in the protocol specification, and just see that, do the implementation of this throughput measurement match what the sender sees. But I don't know if anyone has that available yet, and that might be something on what Lucas said here, that maybe we can spend some time in the lounge and hack on things. I would be very happy to try out some of that stuff as well. So that might be some more things.
Hi, I posted a link into the chat about the Hackathon VPN, which I and several other people in other working groups have relatively successfully used. It has been a bit of a growing pain. The bizarre thing is that it's available outside of the IETF week, but it has no uplink. So you get a layer 2. And for people that are stuck in a lab remotely with all sorts of weird firewall stuff, it's potentially a good solution for getting into that space, but might piss off your people. And I was actually going to ask the question that Marcus just asked about, how are you going to route traffic between things? There are tables with switches on them, so that might be better. And I was also going to offer that I'm just 200 kilometers away and in Ottawa. Turns out I'm going down by car, but not returning by car. But if there's stuff that is awkward for you to bring, cable, switches, whatever that you think I could help you with, then I would be happy to throw that into a trunk. I don't think there's any limit to. I probably can bring a ton of stuff. I mean, literally in there. But let me know. I will not be participating. I have another proof of concept to do.
In the chat, I see that we're talking about applications. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything about that. We have time.
I'll just repeat the comment I put there, which is I think you can probably write a relatively simple client that gets the advice, and then if it's just like downloading a file, it just uses that advice to read from the socket slowly, which will, depending on your quick stack, should release flow control more slowly, which will cause the sender to send more slowly. I don't know if that's something that can be measured or if it's useful, but it doesn't seem that hard to do. Unfortunately, my hackathon time is all for other groups, so I can't build it myself.
Chairs, do we have anything else?
I was doing the 7 seconds of uncomfortable silence. Thanks for running that for us. Yeah, this looks good. I think so. What I hear here is we should probably spend some time before Montreal thinking about a way or ways, probably ways, for steering traffic past a network element, because that's going to be the hardest thing to do, other than just like, oh, look, I have a network element right in front of my test server. It might be that that's the, we have like a taxonomy of topologies, and the one that we get up and running in Montreal is mostly the, hey, I have a network element running right in front of my test server. Yeah, I mean, like we're all sort of like network geeks at various levels of the stack. We all have our favorite ways to steer traffic. Maybe that could be a side table to think about, hey, how can we build these kinds of test networks so that, they're there for future use.
I can take an action to generate some discussion on that in the Slack channel. I think
Let's put that in the Slack channel. Yeah, let's make sure we get all the people who are going to show up in the Slack channel. I mean, that's fine for me. I would maybe send an ad to the mailing list as well.
Will do.
Cool. Any other comments on interop? Excellent. I look forward to seeing you all in Montreal with various levels of jet lag. Cool. Next up, we're going to applicability and manageability, correct?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Let's see. Yes. Yes. Okay. You should have slides controller, but it's still showing the interop. Is it asking you to?
Let's see. I don't see any option, but
actually, no. I think you have to ask for it, right? So.
Okay.
Or maybe it should ask you. Now it should ask you for the deck.
Yeah. All right. So hopefully everybody is able to see the draft. Not the draft, but the presentation. Okay. So this is a quick update on the version 2 that we submitted, primarily in response to some really very useful feedback from everyone that read version 01. And let me move to the next slide. So obviously in this presentation, I just wanted to go over feedback we did receive on the mailing list. And I've just kind of kept it to the top level, not to every individual comment, but the top level comments that were of major concerns. So I'll try to address those. And we have attempted to address those in version 2. The main focus has really been on questions that were raised in terms of the scope clarification, the normative tone, and the questions around whether we are specifying things that are that goes beyond IETF control and into 3GPP. So I've tried to clarify that in the version 2. And if there are still things that need to be addressed, that can be done in the subsequent draft. And so here's a quick list of things that we have tried to address. One is to broaden the language to make sure that we cover other access types just beyond mobile, wireline, Wi-Fi, enterprise, etc. And also added a new section in terminology that provides definition of any of the terms that we have used, just to make sure that the reader is clear with what context and what it is that we're using the term for. Also working on reducing the prescriptive tone. And we may not have done a good job at that, but certainly the intent was to make sure that where we don't need to be prescriptive, we are clear with that. And there were some questions about the network conditions might appear to be that we're talking about congestion as opposed to what SCONE is supposed to be doing. So we have tried to clarify the language there. And likewise, same thing in the question on 4-tuple versus the flow. So we've tried to clarify that. And specifically, the next few slides, I'm just going to walk through some of the things that have been raised. Martin, I think some of this you have raised. And again, I don't claim to be saying that we have clarified everything, but we have tried to do that. So the question on the normative language, we've still used the normative language, and Zahid was suggesting that maybe we should leave this up to the working group to sort of debate and decide if they want to use the prescriptive language, or if not, then we would have to reword everything in terms of suggesting and advising that the network element may do this, or an operator may do this. But as of now, just to keep the consistency, we have kept the normative language, but we have tried to better scope it as to where we are using it and how we are using it. But certainly, if that has to go away, then we have a better, clean way to work that than as it was in the version 0.1. Likewise, the same thing we have done with the 3GPP. Try to clarify, only use 3GPP as what the scope, what 3GPP already defines. We're not trying to attempt to define anything that goes back to 3GPP. And at least that's the intent. And if version 2 does not do that, then we can continue to work on that and improve that. But I think the point is understood, and it's clear that we ought to be very clear with what we're asking within the scope of IETF. And as I said, the number 3 is that the previous draft 0.1 did talk about network conditions. So we're trying to tame that and make sure that we don't misconstrue and give away that we're talking about anything other than what SCONE is supposed to be doing, which is simply providing an advisory information that may or may not be tied to network conditions. Other thing is we've tried to address the SCONE signal. As far as that is concerned, it's mainly within the policy domain and not something that's on the congestion driving any of that. And then we've also limited the use of 3GPP use cases to make sure that we call out as an example of 3GPP. Let's see, I think Martin has a comment here, so let me see if I can quickly read that. During mobility events, SCONE state must persist. Okay, we'll have to come back to that. I have to make sure that I can read through that. Let me just keep going here with what I have. So issue number 2 was the IETF and 3GPP boundaries. So we've tried to clarify that in the draft, and then expanded to include the Wi-Fi use case as well as the broadband use case. And obviously, the 3GPP is mostly as an example. Issue 3, we talked about clarifying network conditions. So previous version in 0.1, we were talking about network conditions. So that has been clarified in section 4.1, where we clearly state that the SCONE operates independent of ECN or L4S as an example. And also the fact that decisions are made based on changes to the policy in the user profile. And maybe we can add more explicit language there, such as that SCONE does not react to any transient congestion signals. So that's certainly open to adding more language that clarifies that intent. Lastly, also on the 4-tuple, we've tried to clarify that the flow level applicability within the policy domain, in that SCONE, when it applies to a flow, we're still talking about individual 4-tuples within a flow. And this issue really dealt with a couple of things here. So the feedback was that there were 2 or 3 things that that I saw in this comment. One was that the title was basically specifically calling out mobile networks. So we have corrected that part and broadening and making the focus more to a SCONE signal and just not tied to the mobile network. And the second part was that the scope needs to be more broad than less. So that also we have attempted to do that with adding additional use cases. Remove the language that talked about unmanaged internet environments. Let's see, there was one more comment that that was there. So the title is corrected. Scope of deployment section actually is removed because that was, I believe, lending more confusion. So we have removed that altogether and make sure that the introduction talks about access technologies that go beyond mobile networks. So those were some of the comments I think that were posted out. So hopefully that addresses those concerns. And then basically version 2, just looking for more comments to see if that addresses some of the issues that were raised in version 0.1. And Martin, I know you have posted a few comments here that I have not looked at here yet, but I can scan through now and see what are the concerns. First one is during mobility events. Hand over to UPF relocation. SCONE state must persist across multiple control plane. Those are requirements that apply to 3GPP elements. Why is that something? So I think that so it's a good point. The challenge is that how much we should be prescriptive in making sure that that actually happens. I mean, we could certainly say that during mobility events, we expect that transition will happen between, if you transition from 4G to 5G or 5G to 4G. So the important point is recognition that the SCONE advisory has to adjust if a user is changing the network. The question is, do we need to be prescriptive, or do we need to say that hopefully the network will send the signal when a user is transitioning from one network to the other? So I think that's the balance we need to draw, and we can draw this balance across the document. But I think right now we have kept the position that certain changes that happen, then we expect a network to follow this SCONE advisory, especially if you're changing the network. So that was the thought. But if we don't go prescriptive, then how do we ensure that actually the network that is implementing SCONE is following mobility aspect? I see Marcus, you're on the line here.
Yeah. So I totally get what is you're trying to describe and what you're trying to do, but I am also quite worried about normative language. I think the document would read better if we more describe, like, in certain events, for this to work, you need to consider this and this. Because if we do in an IETF document and we put normative requirements on specific 3GPP defined network nodes like UPF and SMF, I'm pretty sure I will get some pretty confused emails from like 3GPP delegate SA2 colleagues who are wondering why we are like putting formal requirements on 3GPP interfaces in architecture. So I would strongly advise that we remove normative language completely in this document and more focus on describing, like, these are the considerations you need, these are the aspects you need to consider for making this work across and then you can exemplify with, you know, handovers between 4G and 5G, etc. And there are nodes that need to coordinate and so on. But I would, yeah, putting normative language there would, I think it could create confusion in the 3GPP community, and that might not serve us well, actually, and might be leading to more interactions and liaisons and stuff that might be avoided otherwise, I think. With that said, I think these are important aspects to describe somehow and discuss. I just think we can do it in slightly different language. Whether we fix that before adoption or after adoption, I don't have a strong opinion. I think this is fine for us as a working group to kind of flesh out how we want to describe this. But yeah, this is my view.
Thanks, Marcus.
So I'll jump in here without any hats on. I would say if there's anything that's currently like captured in normative language in the applicability and manageability statement that actually should be in the protocol document, that should flow into the protocol document, right? Like, so there, as an implementer of the protocol, I would not want to have to read both of the documents in order to be able to implement them, right? The applicability and manageability should really be about like, okay, how do we live in a world where SCONE signaling exists, right? As opposed to here is what the implementations of the endpoints and midpoints must do in order to ensure interoperability. That all of that belongs in the protocol document. With my chair hat on, I would say that this discussion makes me wonder whether we are missing a liaison of this work to 3GPP, right? If we are essentially saying, hey, here's this new signal on the network that is being built within the IETF, and it works better within the 3GPP architecture if it is handled by those interfaces in this way. That is what I'm hearing from the room, and I tend to agree with it, is those are questions for 3GPP to handle out in that forum using their processes. But are we missing a liaison statement to them, right? Is this something that we need to bring the 3GPP liaison into the room and say, hey, how do we take this over? So to my first point, I think Martin said wasn't able to start any normative language in there that belonged in the core protocol. Okay, that's good. That makes it a lot easier to say. It sounds like the room is coalescing around, we should probably just cut the normative language from this document completely, because then we're not losing anything that is not already in the core protocol.
So I think I would just say the client hint is something that I guess would be one example that I can cite that might be towards the core protocol. But if that's already addressed in the core protocol, then it's redundant in this document if we have to again specify as a must. So I think, but maybe the larger point is, if the working group feels, and I can understand the reasons why, we can obviously remove the normative language. It's sectionalized in a way that it's very easy for the authors to go and work at it, that we can remove the normative language. It's sectionalized, and we know the generic requirements and then the specific sections within 5G, 4G that we can tone down to be more suggestive. We can recognize that when the mobility event occurs, that the network be able to handle that. So certainly it's not a problem to do that. But on the question that you have, Brian, about 3GPP liaison, so maybe if we have a 3GPP liaison, and I believe we do, maybe we give them a heads up that we've got an applicability and manageability document that talks about things that 3GPP ought to consider, and leave it at that as to see how 3GPP folks wants to handle it. But we can, the document can definitely identify what are the areas that ought to be considered within the 3GPP as they're looking at certain features that have to be supported in order for SCONE protocol to be supported in the mobile network, as an example.
Yeah, on the liaison, I was going to suggest something very similar to that. If at all you want to do a liaison statement to 3GPP, I believe that it should be very much just stating that, hey, we're doing this work. Please have a look if you're interested. It might impact some of the things you do. Don't we think we should ask them for providing input on either the protocol or the documents, because that's really going to open a can of worms and long chain of interactions, I think. But potentially notifying them about that this work is going on and that they should pay attention, that could potentially be a useful thing. But I really would urge us to not go further than that. And also, it can be worth noting that in the SA2 working group in 3GPP, there has been discussions on SCONE already. SA2 handles system architecture for 5G and 6G standardization, and there are proposals on work items to consider SCONE, and maybe Anoop will talk more about that.
Go ahead.
Do you have a comment to make?
Oh, sorry, I was speaking on mute. So I just wanted to add what Marcus mentioned. There is an active proposal that we have taken to 3GPP, to SA2, as a TEI 20 proposal to adopt SCONE 3GPP also, referring to IETF. So that proposal is being discussed actively. So if you are thinking of doing any liaison, please sync, and then we can coordinate on that.
Yeah, I mean, see, there's no denying to the fact that 3GPP will have to support this in order to make sure that SCONE signal carries through, for example, when you switch networks. So, I mean, whether or not, so I think it's clear we can definitely make this non-prescriptive. So I don't think I have any argument against it, but certainly 3GPP would have to do work on their side in order to implement what this working group is hoping to achieve.
Any other comments, questions, or discussion?
So I guess the question I have, Brian, is that I believe the call for adoption runs through tomorrow.
Yes.
And the document is fairly straightforward to address that concern. So that's not an issue.
That concern being the normative
language, yeah. So that's fairly straightforward.
Okay.
To make changes.
So I have not seen a lot of traffic on the list since O2 came out. So I think probably the right thing to do here is follow up on this discussion on the list, like point out, hey, like there would be a 03 with the normative language removed. Martin says he will send a brief note on this point. Like I want that discussion to resolve before we would make like a formal adoption, like formally consider it adopted or not. So I think that what we're going to do is take this back to the list. Hopefully we can converge on this before Montreal, so that like we could do assuming that all of those issues are resolved, we could do a 0-0 once the draft submission opens after the Montreal meeting starts. But I think we're going to take this. We're going to continue this discussion on the list.
Okay.
Cool. I think it does make sense to go ahead and start the mailing list scrub to ensure that like you've seen all the comments and that like you can track those in the GitHub once we move things over to the working group GitHub again, assuming that adoption is successful. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think next up we have any open issues on the protocol document. Marcus, I keep picking on you. Shall I pick on you again?
That's fine. It can be me, Martin, doesn't matter. But we can look at it. I think probably the most interesting. We have 2 open PRs, and one is I think not much to discuss, and one is a little bit controversial. So maybe we should look at the slightly controversial.
I think you can go ahead and do the screen share of you clicking submit on the not much to discuss. That one looks pretty doable to me. I reviewed them before the meeting, but yeah, then we could spend the balance of time on the other one.
Let me check. Screen share. Okay, yeah, here we go. Oh, that was slides.
Sorry, there's like past slides control and then there's grant screen.
You want to share screen? Yes. And can I choose window here as well? Yes, I can. So I'll share this one. Let's see. Well, let me do like this to see what I share as well. Is it readable? Should I make it big? Okay, so we have one very straightforward. I think this is probably we can probably just approve it. We can very quickly go through it. The idea here is that we have put in guidance on how frequently you should update the throughput advice. But if you're not careful, or like if you read it very literally, it means that a network element can potentially wait tens of seconds until it actually sends its first throughput advice, and that's not perfect if what you want to influence is like how applications select an appropriate video track and stuff like that. So the idea with this PR is just to add some text about that you should update throughput advice as early as possible for a new flow. And I think there was just some small comments here. Yeah, there was also a discussion around. So this was in a separate issue. So this is discussion around whether, we're saying that SCONE packet should be in the front of whatever follows it in a UDP datagram. Previously, there was a should that stating that the SCONE packet should be included as the first packet in the datagram. Now we're also stating that it must be included as the first packet in the datagram. What this means is that if we ever come up with a new protocol that wants to communicate something else than just the basic SCONE, we need to create. So maybe we have something, something in front of the SCONE packet in some future protocol. We need to make a new IETF specification and update this one. I think this is also very uncontroversial. So basically, some guidance. I mean, we can look at the text if you want, but I think this is very straightforward, the whole thing. So at the start of a flow, network elements are encouraged to update the rate signal of the flow when the first few SCONE packets observed, so that endpoints can obtain throughput advice early. That's the whole point. Like, put some clear guidance in there. I think this is exactly what everyone wants to do with this, but it's good to put it clearly. And yeah. And also here, yeah, you also guidance to the endpoints, right? That you as soon as you know that you can, or that the peer can receive SCONE packets, you include them as soon as possible, pretty much. So I don't know if there's anyone who want to comment anything on this. Ship it. That's what I see. Okay. I can do that. Should we do it now? Live?
Go for it. It's super late. People need entertainment.
Yeah. This is super entertaining. Yeah. Let's just, we'll get the whole message there. Here we go. All right, then let's go back to the other one. I don't know, Alan, if you want to talk to this one a little bit, or if I should just run through it, or.
Yeah, I can talk through it. If I'm remembering correctly, at the end of our last interim, there was some discussion around this, and I had sort of heard through that there were people who were interested in seeing what it would look like if advice was more like set it and forget it versus like the current document has advice that expires. If you don't hear again, then it sort of flips back to effectively unlimited. So I put this PR together mostly to generate discussion about, and it seems to have had that effect. So I'm not necessarily the one to like advocate for this design or not, but I think the requirement is what's important to discuss. The mechanics of this PR are essentially that the application sends a code point, which means like, I'm not telling you anything because I am the original sender and there's like no advice here at all. If it passes through the network element unmodified, then the endpoint, the receiving endpoint can infer absolutely nothing about what it should be doing, including if you sent that signal through the network and it did stamp a rate in there, then it should continue following that until it gets a new one, not just nothing, right? So versus if the network box really wanted to set it to unlimited because, I don't know, it's a great time to have unlimited data or whatever, like it can set a value which is different than the ones coming from the originating endpoint. But the mechanics are less important than like the performance trade-offs and is it really a requirement or not. So I'll back away. You guys talk about it.
Yeah. So I think that's great summary and yeah, I think the main discussion here is like whether should we have a kind of soft state model as it is specified right now that requires continuous updates. Even if you're not changing your policy, you need to keep you need to keep sending updates periodically as is defined right now. You need to send it at least once per 67-second window, versus set and forget. And I think the discussion that has come up a little bit is that there is some worry about that doing these updates will incur some additional cost on nodes like a packet gateway, user plane function in the 5G network, and will add CPU load. And if you can just set and forget, then maybe there will be less load. And that's seems to be the biggest argument here. And my view on this as a user plane implementer and actually building this network element right now is that I believe that the two things here why I think this periodic update is not a problem. First of all, updating a couple of packets per 67 seconds. I actually did a little calculation. So if we assume that we enforce a 5 megabits per second rate, and we assume that the endpoint precisely follows that rate, that means that you're sending like almost 42 megabytes per 67-second window. And if you have 1400 byte packets, that means that as a network element, you need to update. If you're updating twice per window, you need to update like 0.007%. of packets in a window. So it's extremely little amount of work that you need to do. And also because the way we have defined the protocol, I believe that actually updating a packet is also extremely cost efficient. Basically, if you're doing this in a cost efficient way, you basically read a single 64-bit value from the UDP payload into a register. You do a few bit operations, and then potentially you need to do an incremental checksum update of the UDP checksum. And I believe, in my view, so far, I haven't done large scale testing of this, but from the implementation experience that I've seen and so on, I think that this is a worthwhile trade-off for not requiring kind of having hard state, because having hard state, where this set and forget model, that implies that we create a lot of complexity in other parts of the system. For instance, at the endpoints, you need to consider like how long do I need to trust this if I don't get any new updates, and can I know that I'm still on a path that actually enforces this bit rate and so on. So you need to add back a bunch of heuristics and so on. But yeah, that's my take, and I see that Ifran is on the call, so I'll be happy to discuss.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Yeah. So I mean, I raised the concern, and we haven't, to be frank, we haven't looked at the complete performance impacts, but then we do handle a very large number of flows that we have to rate limit through the UPF.
Yeah.
And there is, I mean, there is a difference between dropping packets and having to modify fields in the packet. I mean, the effort involved does end up being different. So one of the main reason for our comments being, mostly what we have seen, these policies are not changing very often. So we are not arguing against removing the soft state. I know the soft state, the number 67 has been come about due to various conditions, but is it possible that the state lasts longer? And I mean, ideally we would like to kind of make these modifications at the beginning of a flow, and then when the rate changes, and that is where that's been that's kind of been the reason why we're bringing this in, is that if we've got to be doing this every 67 seconds, we'll have to look at the capacity impacts, what it is. I don't have a number now because we haven't done that, but that's a discussion that we've been having internally.
Sure. I think that's a reasonable discussion to have, and I think that might come back to one point. I think maybe that Brian raised in previous meeting, is that we can more or less be ready with the document for publication, but we might hold off publication until we get a little bit more data on this. I, for one, I mean, I am implementing this in a network element right now, and we are not yet ready. I'm not yet ready to do like very large scale testing of the performance, but like very early indications, which basically don't mean anything, is that this is, and of course it depends on your architecture and everything, but given that the simplicity of the protocol, the amount of work you need to do per packet when you update the packet, and the relatively low frequency, all the indications we have so far is that it's negligible. But absolutely, it is something we can take more seriously and maybe revisit if we see data that indicates otherwise. Then just one comment on like how frequently you need to change the policy. I think it's true that many use cases today are based on subscription, like very static subscription policies. But there are use cases discussed among people here, and also with various CSPs where they consider that this throughput device can be slightly more dynamic. For instance, like one thing we discussed today is that you might have different policies associated with different access network types. So you could have 4G and 5G networks and switching those. And if you have a mobile, if you have mobility, those switches can happen relatively frequently, right? So there are cases where this can happen. And then you also have you might have policies that are associated with certain geographical areas, or even estimations of network load and things like that, right? So and I don't want to lock us into a design that prevents us from future use cases either, right? So
no, I agree with you. I've got to say, I do not have, if we knew, so we are still discussing internally. I just want to make sure that this is open a little bit, so that if we do see that this has capacity impacts on the UPF for handling a large number of flows for which we need to do this, for certain subscribers who've got this kind of rate plan, then we would want, hopefully we would have an answer sometime soon, but at least have a guesstimate of what the impacts would be based on our internal design. So that's a main reason to bring it up, is can we keep this issue at some way. If we do see that this becomes an issue, we can bring this up again at a later time.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree with that.
Thank you.
Anoop? Is muted again.
Sorry. So I just want to say quick words here on this thing. So we have been getting this concern from multiple CSP partners about impact on the packet core performance, computational intensive aspect of it, because we have to understand it is in the context of networks which are deployed. So they already have certain capacity which is there, and they are looking in the context of additional computational capacity this is going to be added to their network, right? So getting data from a lab is totally different from trying to understand this impact on the production network. So I think we need to understand this concern is coming from multiple CSP partners. So just wanted to put it in front of this working group.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can only go so far in the lab. What we need, but the furthest we can go right now is to actually create some proper load testing, which is of course possible, but you can never fully replicate the situation in a lab. But again, I would almost urge us, like, if we see data that suggests otherwise, I think the burden of proof is almost if you can show that the cost of this protocol is very high, then that should be the thing that triggers us to do a change here. That's my opinion, because I think the initial assumption here is that this is cheap enough. You can do it. The overhead will be negligible. But if you have data that suggests otherwise, let's take that and we can revisit our assumptions. And that would be my take.
I think that makes sense. I mean, this sounds reasonable too. Let's wait for some data. And so it's good to hear that. Like, let's align this. But I wonder if we can separate out this question of the time frame and time period from, I think, this one of the no limit versus no new advice. And are there other benefits of actually having this signal? And this is maybe half formed, and so this may be a bad idea or a good idea. Is there a sense of understanding? So from YouTube, right? Would this no change signal be a way that actually we could signal as sort of content provider that we are actually operating in a limited capacity, like a limited rate, that we've accepted and detected a bit rate limitation, say, hey, we've been limited, we're suppressing, we're acknowledging the signal. That's a way to actually acknowledge that we're now operating in a constrained condition. Would that be actually an interesting use case of this distinction between no limit versus no change?
So the endpoint sets it to indicate kind of that he was aware of some policy and it's adhering to it. I think it's an interesting case. I think there's a lot of issues around this. like you might want to set policies in both directions. You might need to rewrite this. You might not be sure whether there are other network elements on the path, for various reasons. You might have a device that is tethered over a Wi-Fi network that does SCONE, that then forwards you to a 3GPP network that does SCONE. And as at one network element, what do I like? That signal that comes from an endpoint that states that the endpoint is following the advice. Can I trust it, and does it provide more information than what I can measure? I don't know. It might be interesting, but I think that would be a separate case that we might need to open up separately. I think there was a related discussion early on in this work about having like an explicit ACK of receiving the receiving the advice, but that we decided to, like, it's not worth the additional complexity. But if you see a use case for it, I think worth discussing again. I can just say from a network element perspective is that, you know, we'd probably send this signal and then observe the traffic. If it conforms, it conforms. If it doesn't, we might switch to enforcing it some other way.
That's the idea. If you like switch from like a 4G connection to a Wi-Fi connection, right? And if I come and then you see that, hey, I'm operating in a limited set, and you say, oh no, you should actually be unlimited in this situation, right? It could be a way to actually change to account for change in situations.
Yeah, so it could be, but the idea is that if we have periodic updates and the network element sees that, okay, the access, like I'm in the core network and I see that your access has changed now, the next SCONE packet I see, I will send my updated rate pretty much.
Yeah, granted, this is half formed, and maybe we could sort of take this offline. But again, it came to me sitting here today. Like, I like the principles of having like this separate advice. Like, it feels like it is a useful signal, and I'm maybe trying to come up with I think reasons for it. But maybe it's worth taking offline to explore.
I think it's probably something we can either do in the PR or maybe even open a new issue to take the discussion there. I think that would definitely be worthwhile. Yeah.
Okay, so the question that came up while John was talking was, do we have language that says that you're never supposed to increase it, like in case there are chained network elements? Or like if I as a sender want to somehow communicate that like I am the one, like the original sender is saying like, no, my limit is something less than unlimited. Do network elements know to only ever lower the rate and never raise it?
I think there's text on that you shouldn't set, like if you see a lower value incoming, then you shouldn't like override that with a higher value. I think there's text on that.
Okay. Right.
I mean that's of course you can, that's not something we can enforce, but I think that's like useful guidance. Like, okay, I detect there's something else on this path that wants to limit harder than I do, then it's probably wise to let that through. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure we have some text on that. We probably need to look into that, but otherwise we should probably say something about that.
Okay. Yeah, it was just, then the other thing I jumped in the queue is to just like figure out what to do about this. You know, like I filed a PR instead of an issue because I thought the PR was small and it would generate the discussion, but maybe the right step forward is to close this PR and open issues that track the actual things that people are interested in. Like the way you put it, maybe like, is soft state the right model, or like is soft state too computationally expensive for network elements, and then mark it parked or something and then revisit it later? Or, I mean, I guess if somebody really thinks this is a good way to go, we can leave it open. But I just want to say, like, this was mostly like when I put that RFC letter as there, it was like actual request for comments, just to stimulate discussion. So yeah. I'm okay with any outcome for this PR.
That makes sense.
So jumping in with chair hat, who has the action item to do that, to do the, like, to capture this discussion into the issues that we want to park? Is that Alan? Did I hear you volunteering to do that?
I suppose I can, if you want me to do it. I think it might, I mean, if I was going to do it, I would capture the point that I heard from Irfan about that it might be too computationally expensive. I'm not quite sure that we got to a point where we could articulate why we would want to split it otherwise. But if somebody wants a second issue for that, either file it yourself or tell me what to write. I can just replace
I think you can capture the computationally expensive one, like, because that's an open question, right? Like, I mean, like we have dueling intuitions here that will yield to testing that we're not set up to do yet, right? So I mean that's fine. We should note that we thought about that. But yeah, no, this is just me being a big fan of like for the issue scrub parts of the interims, having the GitHub be the captured state of the discussion.
As a document
so-
editor of a document with 130 open issues, I very much agree with you.
Yeah.
So I will make sure that it's captured as an issue, and I will leave to the editors if they want to close this PR.
Okay, perfect. That sounds like an excellent resolution.
All right. So it sounds like we'll close this one and make it into some issue. Do you want us to look at issues as well, Brian, or?
I took a quick look at those. I think probably we can give everybody 13 minutes back. Like there's nothing there that jumped out at me as like really needing time now before Montreal. Like feel free to disagree with me, but that does not sound like disagreement.
Sanjay is in the queue though. So let's see.
Yeah, I do have, I know Zahid is not here, but he did raise a question on 69, issue 69. I think that some adjustment, some explanation needs to be added. And it's critical that we define network element because a lot of questions come up. And I mean, the fact is that we can't hide behind the fact that the most useful use case is actually the mobile network. And, you know, questions keep coming up, you know, so we can't be just we got to address, you know, what a network element is. So I think it's worth looking at that issue.
Okay, yeah, this is an interesting issue. This will definitely, lead to some discussion. I'm not sure we can resolve it here, but okay, yeah, current text uses the term network element, but it does not define or describe network elements. It appears that there are certain expectations. It sits in the access network. I'm not sure that's an expectation, but likely. It has visibility to UDP4 tuple flows, yes. Maintains some sort of state about the rate thing that the flows are using. It has rate limiting policies or access to it. It can detect SCONE packets in those UDP4 tuple flows and put rate advices in those packets. This is what I'm inferring, but I'm not sure if everyone would end up inferring the same. Not any router, yeah. Yeah, maybe there's a terminology section that we need to work on to describe, but I don't want to get too descriptive either here because this is we're defining a protocol and I mean we can. There are some requirements on if you participate in this protocol, you need to be able to do a number of things.
So I think it makes a lot of sense to have this definition. I think I'll make an observation. We got more discussion on Alan's PR than on this issue, and I think there were sort of like equivalent timeframes that they were filed. Probably it would make sense to turn this into a PR, and then we can argue, you know, more directly about that because I think. Like when I look at this list, you know, me not chair, just someone who's been following this work, I think this is overly restrictive, right? Like, so I think that I go back to the discussions we had during the BOF about there needs to be a credible threat of network violence, right? And this is one very particular sort of arrangement by which you can have by which you can follow out on that threat of network violence. But there are others as well, right? Like, so I think that if we spend a little bit of time discussing and refining that and getting to sort of like, what is the minimal definition of what it takes to be like, you know, what it takes to be a SCONE network element, I think that would be a very fruitful discussion.
And is that something that should go into this document or the applicability?
So we do use the term network element in the protocol document.
Sure.
So, you know, having spent a fair amount of time in another working group that was, you know, very deep into reusing terminology that everybody thought they knew what it meant, and then having to actually define it, like I'm talking about taps here, right? Like actually having to define it specifically within the context, I think this is actually a fairly useful exercise to go through, because you'll find places where people didn't understand that they were talking about different things until they write down, okay, this is what the network element is.
Yeah. That makes sense. So suggestion to make a PR. We can write that.
Suggestion to make a PR, yes.
And maybe the author of the issue could author a PR. So.
Yes, I think that we are volunteering Zahed to do this. I mean, you could have showed up at midnight. I don't know. I can add that comment to capture this discussion. I can add that comment to the issue.
Right.
With that, any other business? All right, then thank you all very much for your time, your attention, for the discussion. I think this was a really good interim, and this is our last interim meeting before IETF 124 in Montreal. So see you on the mailing list and see you in Montreal. Have a great day, night, etc., everyone.